your maiden name was Heather Height, and your married name was Heather Denny. And I can remember you in a moment of grief and hardship and voices coming at our relationship and maybe a little bit of attack coming on me for stepping in and trying to be the other guy or whatever. I can remember you sitting down and through tears saying, babe, I don't think you want this. I don't think you want the baggage that comes with marrying me and with marrying someone who's been married before. And I remember it was the Holy Spirit that I said, babe, I fell in love with Heather Denny, not Heather Height. Like, I fell in love with a woman who was married before, and I understand what that comes with. And I understand the weight that that carries. And I'm willing. Hey, welcome to the Greater Marriage Podcast. My name is Dustyn. This is my wife, Heather, and we are the Millers. And whether you're joining from YouTube or just your favorite podcasting network or social media or wherever you're joining us from, and welcome to the Greater Family. We're so glad that you're here.
Yeah, and out of the hundreds of podcasts you could choose to listen to, you've chosen to listen to us, and that is such an honor. So Today we wanted to just take a little bit of time to just kind of share our story so that hopefully you can feel more connected to the voices on the other side. I think there's a ton that we could unpack here, but we're going to give a shortened version. Some of these pieces we'll go into deeper on later episodes. But I guess let's start back at the beginning.
Let's do it. Yeah, it's funny. I feel like it's hard to tell our story in short form because God has done so much in such a short amount of time. Today we're 35. We have 3 kids. We've been in ministry over 15 years. And I just feel like in that amount of time, we have just seen God come through for us over and over and over again. The faithfulness of God is so evident in our story and in our lives. And I'm honored to be able to share this with you today and to bring you into our family and to allow you to just kind of be an extension of our home and an extension of us. And I hope that this story blesses you. I hope that you see the Lord in it and that it strengthens your faith for whatever you're going through.
Yeah.
Where do we start? My goodness. High school?
So we knew each other kind of in high school. I was dating somebody else. You were working for my mom.
Okay, so Heather and I are from a very small town just west of St. Louis. Yes. So go Cardinals, hence my St. Louis Browns hat, OG Cardinals. But, we grew up in this small town, and there was like 4 places to work. There was like an outlet mall with 2 stores in it. Or you worked for like your parents, or which you did, or you worked at this country club that Heather and I worked at called Innsbruck, or fast food. Shout out Innsbruck. But yeah, we started working together in high school, and I had this amazing boss, unbelievable, best boss ever, who is now my mother-in-law. And man, it's funny because I had a crazy connection with that boss, which is just funny to look back and again just see God working. Like, I loved Kim, my boss. I loved working there. I think she really did see something special in me. I don't know why. I was just a punk kid, but I remember even after I went to college, she would like call me and check in on me and text me and see how I was doing. And she always said, man, if you're ever back in town, please come work. Like, you've always got a place here. You're like, a second son to me. We always had just a special connection. I always told her, if you ever met my mom, y'all be best friends. Like, you guys are so much alike. And I always felt like she was like my work mom, just always felt a special connection to her. And yeah, you worked there, but we really didn't know each other long there, right? Because you were dating a kid that I had grown up with, a guy that I loved. And if you want to kind of tell that side of the story,
so I was dating my high school sweetheart at the time and, barely knew you. And I think that huge piece of my life is for another episode because, wow, I could speak for hours and hours and hours on the redemption of the Lord and what he's done in my life. But in short, I married my high school sweetheart straight out of high school, 18 years old, a baby. I still am shocked. I think about my babies getting married at 18 and I can't even fathom them being married that young. But I did, and he was in the military, and so we were stationed in California for a number of years, met some incredible people, and it was there that I was in business school and really felt the Lord call me to ministry, and wondered why I was in business school then. Thought about throwing that in the can and just felt peace about continuing on that path. So I continued in business school, but while I was there, began working at the church that we were planted in California. And that was kind of my first taste of ministry. I got to assist the youth pastor at the church there and just fell in love with it. Fell in love with helping people see what God sees in them. And so was able to do that. During that time, you also were pursuing ministry. We had no connection with each other through those years. You also were in Bible college pursuing ministry, falling in love with that. Ironically, also youth ministry, which is so funny. And then to kind of take a really deep, difficult season and make it compact for sake of this space. I was married for 3 years and then tragically, unexpectedly widowed. During that time, Dustyn was in Oklahoma in Bible college. I was back in Missouri. You came back for the funeral because, like you mentioned, you had grown up together. You guys had done Taekwondo together.
No doubt, Karate Kids.
So you came back for the funeral, and I don't even remember you being at the funeral. I don't remember a whole lot about that day, but I think past that season, you had encouraged your sister to reach out to me. Your sister and I became roommates. Through that, our families became friends. You would come back from Bible college, like, why, Heather, why are you here at my family function?
I remember coming back for Christmas one time and you being at my family Christmas. And I was like, why is Heather here? And they were like, and I remember you telling me like very bold, like, oh, I took your place in the family. Like, go back to Oklahoma. Your family doesn't need you anymore. Like, I'm here. I'm hanging out. Like, we're good, you know?
Yeah. And so it wasn't, I don't know, too long after your sister and I had become roommates that, they were doing this benefit night for you. And I went to be supportive, and they played this video about the ministry that you were doing in Oklahoma. And I remember watching it just being so intrigued because I also had developed such a heart for ministry. And that, I think, kind of opened the door to the conversation. And we started sharing about ministry life. And then that kind of led to us sharing about us both grieving in very different ways. Obviously, I was still grieving the loss of my husband. You were grieving the loss of a childhood friend. And we just kind of started to form this friendship that over time, we didn't even realize it, but that the Lord was really molding into something so much bigger, so much deeper than friendship.
Yeah, and I think that there was a moment where, as we began to talk and get to know one another, I think there was a moment where we realized, hang on, this may be developing into something more. And I think we both probably...
We're terrified.
I was trying to say that nicely. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, oh, this is, you were still Nathan's wife. And so it's like, this is my childhood friend's, widow. And of course, we had an awesome connection. We had awesome conversations, and we had, similar interests in ministry and that bond of like being able to talk about Nathan and laugh about him. And just, he was such a funny, big personality, such an incredible man of God. And we just were able to kind of have this common bond. But then eventually it was like, hang on, I don't know that you were ready to really be in a relationship. I knew how serious it was for someone to pursue you. And I didn't want to take that lightly. And so I think there was a moment where we both kind of stepped back and were like, hang on, like that was a little flirty, my bad. Like, where it was like, I'm just so like my intentions are pure. And I think you were like, hey, just, I'm probably not ready to date. Like it was this awkward dance of how do we navigate this friendship? What's going on here? You know what I mean? Like, I don't really know. And I remember just kind of going to the Lord and saying, God, I don't know what you're doing here, but I want to make sure that I honor Heather. I want to make sure that I honor Nathan. I want to make sure that I honor their families. And And I want to make sure that this friendship or whatever this is honors you. And so, like I said, there was this moment where I think we both got terrified and kind of pumped the brakes.
I had no desire to remarry. I mean, I joked with friends about, I'll just become the crazy cat lady, because is it worth it? Is it worth the risk of putting my heart out there again? When you go through trauma, when you experience a loss at such a high level, you're in survival mode. You can't even imagine going through that again. So the thought of even opening that door for the potential of heartbreak again didn't feel worth it to me at the time. And as time went on, the Lord just continued to soften my heart and show me that he wasn't done with me yet, that he does what he always does, and he works things together for our good. Even the things that it seems like are going to destroy us, he turns around and works it together for our good. And honestly gives us something more beautiful than we ever could have even imagined for ourselves. And I'm so glad that eventually I got my stubborn self out of the way and allowed that door to be cracked open again.
Yeah. And I think that, once we did decide, like, okay, this is there's a mutual connection here. We are like feeling it. Like there's like, I think that there's a potential for us to date. I think that we both took that very seriously, very early on. I know that I didn't want to play with your heart. I didn't want to pursue you or even begin that if we weren't going to be serious, because I knew the situation and I knew how serious it was. And I think that, in the same way you were like, hey, I'm not dating around. Like I'm not messing around. Like I've done this before and I know what this looks like. And, I'm not trying to just feel it out anymore. Like I know what I need in a husband, and I know what I need. I know what I don't need. And I know that I'm not just here to date and figure it out. Right. And so I think that we got to this place where it was like, okay, if we are going to date, like we have long-term vision here. And if we're going to date at all, I think that the goal is that we will be married, and like we want to make sure that we pursue God. And I think that it just kind of forged something between us very quickly, where it was like, hey, we're not jacking around. Like for me, I had a lot of growing up to do. I was 21 years old, and I just like gone to a 2-year Bible school and then Bible college, and felt like I had this giant call to ministry, but I had no idea what it was. And I was still very immature and very insecure, and just, I think that it put me in a place of like, hey, I've really got to grow up if like I'm going to be a husband. Right. And it's like, and I'm just a totally different perspective of, hey, I am going to marry somebody who has been here before, who has been married before. And then there's a whole other layer of insecurity where it's like, oh, am I going to measure up? Like, I know how incredible Nathan was. Am I going to measure up? And I don't know how to be married, and they had 3 years to figure it out. And so how in the world am I going to step into this and try to fill those shoes? And
the enemy's so good at the comparison game.
Oh man, the comparison game is brutal anyways. Yeah. Right. And so in a situation like this, there was so much that we had to navigate, even to get to the altar, right? Even to get to a place of marriage. We had to navigate the opinion of others. Well, is Heather moving on too quickly? Is Dustyn just swooping in and taking advantage of someone who's hurting? I mean, all of these, there was so much talk. And when you're from a small town, if you're from a small town, like there were friends involved, there was family involved, there, and it's like there were different perspectives, people who didn't know our heart, people who, I'd been gone for 3 years and people didn't know me or how much I had developed or matured, or if I had, or, it's like they didn't know my intentions.
Well, and you want to be mindful of other people, but also you don't want to miss out on what the Lord has for you because of the opinions of other people. Yeah. And so I think we finally got to a place where, despite pushback that maybe we got from some, we knew that the peace of God was all over it. And at the end of the day, that's all that mattered. It didn't matter the opinion of other people. It didn't matter what I brought to the table and what you brought to the table and all the question marks of how we were going to navigate those things, because we knew that his peace surpassed all of it and that he would iron out those details as we went. He would help us figure out how to navigate all those. And so I think once we finally got ourselves out of the way, is when we were finally able to really truly embrace what the Lord was trying to do for us.
And the people that really actually cared about us and had our best like intentions, they surrounded us with love, and they accepted, they saw what God was doing, and sometimes even through pain.
I was just going to say that that doesn't necessarily mean it's easy. You know, when we see even people around us step into something new that the Lord's doing for them, it's exciting, but sometimes that comes with a little bit of heartache.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for those people who also were still grieving loss. And I'm sure it was so difficult to see me move forward at times, but who were able to step outside of the picture and see what God was doing. Because now here we are, 12, 13 years later, and look at what the Lord has done.
Yeah.
And look at what we would have missed had we valued the opinion of others more than we valued the peace of the Lord.
Yeah. We actually, I remember in preparation for marriage, we dated for 10 months. We were engaged for 6 months. And in that preparation time, I remember after we got engaged saying, maybe we just elope. Like, I know people are going to have opinions. I know that, people are going to maybe not be happy with how quickly we've moved, or maybe not believe in our relationship or believe in the peace that we say we walk in, or we say that we have, knew that we had, right? And I remember sitting down and making the decision, like, no, we're going to make this a celebration of the redemptive work of God in your life, in our life, and what he was doing, giving you the opportunity to be married again, giving you the opportunity to be a mom, which you had longed to be and hadn't had the opportunity to be yet. And I think that seeing that redemptive work of the Lord, it was like, no, this has to be celebrated. And even through hardship, even through mixed emotions and opinions, we decided we were going to have a big wedding, and we were going to celebrate what God was doing. And I think our wedding was a little heavy, right? We played a video kind of explaining what God had done. And I remember, obviously, like, the guy walks out first, and I remember walking out with my guys, and it was like you could hear a pin drop, and all you could hear were like it's like the crowd were already in tears before you ever walked down. And it was like, man, it was heavy what the Lord was doing that day. But it was also so freeing. Yes. It's like that burden is light. His yoke is easy, his burden is light. And it was like there was a burden on us to see it through and to see through what God was doing in our relationship and in our marriage. And I think that our wedding day was really a picture of that, where I think that maybe some eyes were even opened that day to what the Lord was doing. And I think that people began to build a little bit of trust with the people that we loved, and they saw how sincere we were and how much we cared, and that we were going to honor Nathan, and we were going to honor your life. And, I can remember your maiden name was Heather Height, and your married name was Heather Denny. And I can remember you in a moment of grief and hardship and voices coming at our relationship, and maybe a little bit of attack coming on me for stepping in and trying to be the other guy or whatever. I can remember you sitting down and through tears saying, babe, I don't think you want this. I don't think you want the baggage that comes with marrying me and with marrying someone who's been married before. And I remember it was the Holy Spirit that I said, babe, I fell in love with Heather Denny, not Heather Height. Like, I fell in love with a woman who was married before, and I understand what that comes with. And I understand the weight that carries. And I'm willing to carry that weight, and I believe I'm graced for it. And I believe that the Lord, in his grace, has allowed us to build this incredible thing through hardship, and it hasn't been perfect.
Right.
And it hasn't been without bumps and bruises and scrapes and scars and hard times. But man, the Lord has shown us so much grace through all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a huge moment for me. Definitely eye-opening. And it was the Lord speaking through you. It was exactly what I needed to hear, at that time. So we get married, and we had a plan of starting a family. Like you kind of hinted at, that was something that was always a desire in my heart, but something that I felt like was out of reach, after stepping into widowhood. But we were young still and had planned to wait 2 or 3 years to get married because, I mean, the first year of marriage is a learning curve in itself. Throw on top of that, you know, everything that comes with stepping into a relationship with someone who is formerly widowed. And I mean, you can imagine the family dynamics that come with that. The grief. I mean, grief is not one of those like one and done, you grieve the loss, you move on, that's it. Like it's something that carries on and trickles through and rears its head when you least expect it. And, you know, trying to just kind of navigate all of that together is a lot in the first year of marriage. But then on top of that, 6 weeks after we got married, had a little surprise.
So we got married October 27th, 2012. And I can remember right after Christmas, you saying, hey, I forgot one Christmas gift. I just found it in the closet somewhere and I need you to open it. And it was a long, skinny box. And I literally remember looking at her going, did you give me like a personalized pen? Like, what is this?
Sort of.
Pen that you peed on. I open it up and it's a positive pregnancy test. And I'm like shocked, excited, terrified. And I look up and you're just weeping. And I'm like, babe, we want this. This is exciting. You're like, I'm too young to be a mom. I'm not ready. I can remember us both kind of having a moment of like, okay, this is real. And here we are, 24 years old, right? 23 years old. And 23.
23.
And it's like, okay, here we go. Like, we can do this. We're going to have a baby. And, you know, our 9 months later, or 10 months later, here comes Jericho. And
little did we know, though, that, you know, pregnancy would be so hard. My mom, also your former boss, she just painted this picture of pregnancy being the most beautiful time of her life. And she never felt better than when she was pregnant. And that's exactly what I thought. From the moment I found out I was pregnant, I was miserably sick. I'm not even talking about just like the extra weight and the, you know, aches in your body and all that.
What's the movie? Like What to Expect When You're Expecting? Is it the one where one girl like sneezes and the baby comes out and the other girl has a miserable pregnancy? Yeah.
I was the miserable one. My mom was the sneezer, apparently. I was so incredibly sick. And so, wow, our first year of marriage sucked with a capital S. It was so bad. Yeah. I mean, you know, I don't know. I'm a stubborn personality. You are not a stubborn personality, but it still was hard just figuring out the marriage stuff in itself. You would think I would have been better at it having been married before, but But
personality differences, and I think you were trying very hard not to compare. You were trying very hard not to do it the same way. You were trying very hard to make sure this was our thing. We were doing it our way, right? And so from my perspective,
also trying not to barf.
Sure, and trying to stay awake at all times. You know, like your energy was drained. It's like you were sick all the time. And for me, you know, it's like being an insecure. I realize, man, marriage is a mirror, and it will show you every insecurity that you have. And I realized coming into a marriage where there was a lot of doubt and there was a lot of comparison for me, and I think I internalized a lot of that. But I'm trying to measure up, and I'm feeling all of these emotions. And then my wife wants nothing to do with me. She's sick. She's tired. She's angry. And it's like I'm just constantly wondering, like, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? And then I'm mad because you're mad, and it's like I'm exhausted because you're exhausted, and I think, and it just there's just all of these. The enemy just creates so much room for. I don't know, anger and resentment and unmet expectations. And I think that all of that just kind of compiled, and, even right before Jericho came, right before he was born, we just had some really, really hard moments, really hard conversations, because we weren't having conversations. And this is one of the reasons we care so much about communication and about marriage.
We were so incredibly bad at it.
We were so bad at it. And I was an awful husband, and I didn't take care of your needs. All I thought about was myself, and all I thought about was my unmet expectations, and how this isn't, even though there was this amazing grace from God on us, and even though like I saw the work of God, it was like, did we make the right decision? Because this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? And it's like, I think that you go into marriage thinking a certain type of way, and when it doesn't look that way, you hold it against your spouse.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, hey, what can we do to make this better? And I think that there's just a lot to navigate there. And I think that we had a lot to navigate. And then the baby's born, you begin to feel better, but then we're both just surviving for a year,
then
right?
We have a colicky baby.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys have children, if you have children, you know, like that first year is survival. You know, you're just trying to figure, I mean, we're young, never been parents before, trying to figure out, when do you eat? When do you sleep? When do I change you? Who takes what? You know, your turn. Like you're laying in bed, like just nudging each other, you know, and it's like, no, you got to do this one. Like, and it's like, we're both trying to work too. We were both in ministry, both working at a church in Missouri. And
thank God for his grace.
Oh man.
I mean,
unbelievable.
We were so, I don't know. I mean, just not there. We were failing miserably in so many areas, I feel like, but the Lord's grace still covered us.
Yeah.
And we still had the opportunity to continue to grow. And I mean, being planted at that church changed everything for us.
Oh, it changed our lives. I mean,
it's the reason that we were able to stick it out because of the support we had there. And I'm so glad that even in that hard season, you didn't bail on your terrible pregnant wife.
Oh, Lord. Hey, listen, there was a mutual decision to not bail because it was, I mean, there's two sides to every story.
I love what our pastor, when he talks about marriage and you know, divorce, he says, hey, when we got married, we entered a room with no exits.
Yeah.
And
that's how he defines covenant. It's like, man, covenant is you entered a room with no exits. There's no way out.
I love that. Yeah. I love that though, because I mean, if we're being honest, I'm sure that majority of marriages have hit that point where it's like, what did I do? Did I make the right decision? Are we going to get through this? Is this even worth it? And to know that, hey, divorce is not an option. I mean, even through those really, really, really hard seasons and even hard seasons that came after that, we've never thrown out the word divorce.
No.
It's never even been an option. It's like, okay, this is where we're at. Now, where do we go from here? How do we fix this? Yeah,
I think the world can see covenant or the commitment of a marriage as a trap, or, you know, it's like the old ball and chain, or, you know, it's like, oh, I just felt trapped and I had to get out. For us, there's freedom in covenant.
Right.
There's a freedom in, hey, we know how this ends. This ends with us together. So how do we make this the absolute best that we can make it? There's a freedom in that I trust that you're not looking for a way out. And you trust that I'm not looking for a way out. And when you have that mutual understanding that, hey, we are in this for life no matter what, I know that no matter how bad I mess up, I can still come to you and humbly say, hey, I messed up. And I didn't do this right. Or I can come to you and say, hey, I don't love the way you handled this, or I don't love the way our marriage looks right now. And I know that I can say that without the fear of losing you and without the fear of you walking away, because I know that there's safety in it. There's safety in our marriage and in our relationship to know that, man, we're not looking for a way out. We're not looking, it's not even an option. And so I know that anything I bring up, we're going to work out. We're going to figure it out.
But don't you think that's the issue so often, is that because there's not that safety in honest communication, people feel like they can't bring something to their spouse.
For sure.
Because they're afraid they're going to bail. And then it just gets stuffed. And then as years go on, you end up in completely different places. And it's like, I don't even know how we come back from here, because there's not that foundation of open, honest communication. I think that's one thing that in the beginning we were so incredibly bad at, that we have worked so hard to become good at, that has just amplified every area of our marriage. Because like you said, no matter what we hit our head on, no matter how difficult it gets, we know that we can come back to each other and have honest conversation about it and realize that we're on the same team, and together we're going to figure out how to get through it.
Yeah. Being 100 miles apart starts with a 1 degree difference, and you just drift. and drift and drift and drift and drift until you look up and you're like, I don't even know who you are anymore. I don't even know who we are anymore. But if you're constantly course correcting and you're constantly pursuing one another and you're constantly going to God saying, God, help me. I need your grace. I need you in my relationship. I need you to show me what is in me that offends you. Like when you're constantly going back to God and your relationship is built on that foundation, it allows you to not have that drift where you don't end up so far away that the damage is too far gone to fix. I mean, we serve a God who heals and makes new. And so if your relationship is broken or you feel lost or you feel like you've drifted too far, know that God wants to make that new. He wants to create in you a clean heart, a pure heart, a soft heart toward your spouse. And he wants to do something fresh. And I think that revelation in us and just the things that we navigated and the hardship that we went through to even get to the altar, the hardship that we went through afterwards, just kind of exploded this ministry in our hearts that, man, we've got to help other couples. We've got to help other couples navigate grief. We've got to help other couples navigate hard situations and like unexpected situations and unexpected pregnancies and unmet expectations. And there's so many things that can destroy marriage. And I think that that's why we even do what we do, because we want to be able to be a place where people can come and learn from the wisdom of God and learn from our mistakes and find that area where they say, or that time where they say, okay, we can do this.
And we believe that no matter how far gone it feels like your marriage is, there's still hope. We serve a God who is bigger than any degree of separation that we may be feeling between our spouse. And he does desire to heal it. He does desire to turn it into something new. And so if that is you today, we would encourage you to seek counsel from your church, from leadership at your church, to begin having open and honest conversations with your spouse and realize that the Lord wants to do a work in you. You just have to be willing.
Yeah, for sure. Fast forward to today, right? I know we kind of took the majority of our time talking about the first couple of years of our marriage, but fast forward to today, I mean, we were on staff at the church in Missouri 5 years. God called us back to Tulsa, where I went to Bible school, and really, honestly, where our relationship kind of started. You were in Missouri, I was here. It was this long distance friendship that started first. God called us back here, and we had 2 babies at the time. We moved to Tulsa in 2016, so almost 9 years ago, and came on staff at a church here. We were on staff there for 5 years.
Had a third baby
in there. And so, now we have the honor of, we actually just volunteer at the church now. Neither of us are on staff anymore, but we both serve at the church. We lead a young marrieds group of about 20 couples who are just seeking to, these are couples that have been married from 1 to 7 or 8 years, and a couple of them have babies, but they really are just trying to form a solid foundation, and they're in community with one another. They're learning and growing, not only from what we get to teach, but also just from doing life with one another, and being able to say, oh my gosh, you guys struggle with that too. Thank God it's not just us. And having that community around one another, I think, has been so healthy for us to see and be able to just kind of help them avoid maybe some of the things that we went through, but also to be able to bring them together and see them do life together. And it just they have such healthy, thriving marriages, and it's just so cool to see God working through us even today, and being able to do what we do here with Greater Marriage and help other couples and just fulfill this calling that we feel like God put on our hearts years ago.
Well, and just to see how the Lord orders our steps.
Yeah.
It's like I said at the very beginning of this episode that, I got my first taste of ministry as an assistant to a youth pastor, and you were in Bible college for youth ministry. And, from moving to Tulsa, it's like we did youth ministry, which kind of uncovered this love for that young adult age. And, so many of our leaders were college age kids. And so, then we were able to step into that and really spend time developing that college age. And then as they stepped into the young married season, we kind of followed with them. And the Lord has just continued to reveal the plans that he has for us and the call that he has on our life. And now here we are leading a young marrieds group and realizing like, okay, Lord, we see it. Like, this is what we were created to do. Like, we were created to help marriages be greater. And that's so simple. That's such a simple statement, but I think it covers so much.
Yeah.
And I think that is the Lord's heart for us. Not that he expects perfection, but he expects pursuit. He expects our pursuit. He expects us to pursue each other in marriage. And it's just been so cool to see how all of our steps along the way have been ordered to bring us to this place that we believe is just a launching pad for all that he wants for us.
Yeah, man, don't despise humble beginnings.
Yeah.
What the Lord is doing in you in this season right now maybe isn't for this season. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's preparing you for a season to come. I can remember saying, I'll do anything but youth ministry. Even after to be honest, I picked that in Bible school because it was the easiest, funnest track to do. Like, it was just like, we're going to have blasts, we're going to throw big parties, we're going to, throw pie in each other's face, drink a bunch of soda and junk food, and like, it's going to be so fun. And I can remember like doing youth for a little bit and be like, that ain't it. And then we did it for 5 more years. And then we came here and did it and it was like, the Lord was preparing us to teach and prepare and build structure and create ministry structure and lead young adults that turned into young marrieds and like all of these things. Don't despise what the Lord is doing in you right now. Your gift will make a place for you. Live in the calling that you have right now. Like, whatever ministry opportunity you have right now, whatever life opportunity you have right now, cultivate that thing. Mm-hmm. Take care of that. Do it well. Do it as unto the Lord. Don't despise where you're at right now. Don't despise what you're doing right now, whatever that is. Don't despise where your marriage is at right now. Have the long-term vision to say, I'm going to get better. We are going to get better. That God is going to do it. The call that God placed on our lives, even when we were in our first year of marriage and it was hard and it was like, man, we've got to help other people do this. That call has taken 12 to 15 years to develop. And it's still being developed. And you just have to remain faithful. And so how do we make our marriage greater today? Even just through the grace of God in our story. I mean, we want to challenge you guys to pursue what the Lord has called you to do. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to pursue it now, even if you feel unqualified, even if you feel like the Lord hasn't completed the work in you. I mean, begin that journey. Begin to walk it out. There's a process to this, right? There's a sanctification process where God is setting you aside and doing a work in you and peeling off layers of you that don't need to be there, that you can't take to the next level with you. And man, I would just encourage you as couples, as individuals. God has called us. We talk about this in one of our other podcasts, that God has called us as individuals, and He's also called us as a couple. Mm-hmm. And so pursue that. Ask God what He's called you to do. Why did you put me on the earth? Why did you bring us together? Why did you put us on the earth? And then once you have that clarity, man, pursue the Lord and pursue what He's called you to do and watch what He does. Watch His grace on your life.
Yeah. Well, thanks for jumping on with us today for a little bit. I hope that us being vulnerable and sharing a little bit of our story just helps you realize we're just two normal people just trying to do what the Lord is calling us to do. And we're so honored to do that. So if you want to be a part of the Greater Marriage family, you can always jump over to greatermarriage.com. You can subscribe on there. You can subscribe to any of our streaming platforms on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. On our website, you'll also find a free gift from us to you, 75 fun and flirty ways to keep the spark alive. That is a great tool for you to do exactly what Dustyn was talking about. Look at those things, implement them into your marriage. Again, it's totally free. We're just so grateful. We're so grateful for you. We love you. We are praying for you. Go be great.